All right, everyone. Thanks for holding on there for a minute. I think we're in good shape to go ahead and get started here. Again, my name is Adam Laub, VP of Marketing here at STEALTHsession. Along with me today, I have Chris Olson, who is our VP of Product Management. We're going to be taking you through a session today focused around stale and redundant group cleanup within Active Directory. So why don't we first start with a quick agenda of what we're going to be covering on today's call. So just to get us started here, this is week 4 of our new STEALTHsession series designed to highlight specific solutions of interest within the Stealth Audit Management platform and how we help address some of the hot topics you're hearing out there across the Microsoft technology stack today. Just so you know, next week's STEALTHsession is going to be focusing on cleaning up distribution lists within Active Directory and obviously as that relates to your Exchange environments. If you're interested for that call, we're going to be taking you through a complete workflow of how we accomplish that within the Stealth Audit Management platform. And if you are interested, just let your associated account representatives know, and an invite will be going out to you as well. So we'd love to have you back for that. Just some rules for today's call. If you do have questions, we're definitely going to answer those today. However, we do ask that you wait till the end of the call for us to answer them. You're free to ask those questions throughout the call, however, using the question dialog of your GoToWebinar interface. Additionally, you can quote-unquote raise your hand, and I will monitor that throughout the call and make sure that we address each of your questions in the time that we've allotted at the end for Q&A. So with concern to today's agenda around stale and redundant group cleanup, we're going to be talking about group cleanup from an Active Directory perspective. And obviously, there's a lot more to cleaning up groups within AD when you take into account the file-level activity monitoring in your file systems and other data repositories in your environment, and using activity as an indicator of stale or active groups within your organization. However, what we're going to do is get you a great start here with focusing on what you can do today within Active Directory without having to necessarily take activity into account. So Chris is going to be taking us through some of the problems associated with groups that you're likely facing today, and how we're going to leverage the Stealth Audit Management platform to help clean up those stale and redundant groups, and also aid to initiatives like least privilege access and reducing group proliferation in your environments. So with that said, we'll switch over and we'll get right into the nitty-gritty here. I'll pass it over to Chris. Thanks, Chris.
Great. Thanks, Adam, very much. So what's the problem? You know, today organizations are being more and more asked to establish identity and access management programs, role-based access, really enforcing least privilege access. You know, we've been all hearing in the news the incidents, you know, most recently, like this weekend, NASDAQ last month, the WikiLeaks incident. You know, going back, monthly, you can track back these incidents of issues and risk in everybody's environment, going back as far back as, you know, probably the most popular one that people remember is TJ Maxx. But really what this is about is understanding who has access to your systems and securing them, and really establishing any sort of systems and data governance program, you know, starts initially in AD. So that's why our focus is really looking at this. Now, key product enhancements that we've added to the Stealth Audit Management platform have been around inventorying your users and your groups. You know, that's a key relationship that we'll talk about, and we're really going to scrutinize today is all the users in your environment, all the groups, and every group that people are either a direct or an effective member of within the environment. So what we're finding in a lot of different customers that you guys are wrestling with is really the basic concept of groups. You know, where did this come about? You know, groups really were established as a way to provision, make it easier on all of us to you know, take 10 people, simply drop them into a group, and then take that group and tie it to the resources within your environment, whether it's you know, shared mailboxes, public folders, applications you know, that are in your environment, like SharePoint, the unstructured file system, home drive, shared apartment drives. You know, it's a lot easier to wrestle with one group than it is to keep track of 10 individual users. And those are obviously small numbers just for illustration. But what we're finding in all of our organizations after, you know, 10 and 20 years, mergers and acquisitions, how things have changed over the years, really the relationship of users and groups has just exploded, and the key really is about the group management. We're finding, in the average organization, there's about 10 times as many groups as there are users. So now what was a simple concept early on about creating a group to make it easier to manage the ACLs for 10 people really is in many cases a single user being part of 10, 20, 30, and sometimes even more than that, different group memberships, which is wreaking havoc on many organizations. What comes out of this is token bloat, is a common problem that people are wrestling with. So the problem really here is simplified in many different ways here. We've got the bullet points up on screen. There's just too many groups to manage in AD. So how do we start looking at what groups are out there, start addressing the low-hanging fruit? Since AD is that key part in every organization tied to the servers and the applications, let's start by cleaning up and streamlining Active Directory and get rid of the number of groups we manage, because it's going to make our lives easier for establishing that role-based access all across the rest of the environment. So how do we provide you insight into understanding how things are being nested, comparative analysis of both direct and effective group memberships, and starting to get rid of things that we don't need anymore? So the Stealth App Auto Management Platform really gives you the capability to go through. Very simply, we've made it a 4-step process to really talk about what it is we're going to do. So I talked about the key Active Directory inventory, which is a key product enhancement that we added to the management platform. Now the job sets are really there to analyze, collect the information, and really exploit that information that we've inventoried out of AD and do all of this business intelligence, the deep insight into what's going on within these users and groups in that relationship. So we'll talk about this 4-step process very briefly, talking about collecting of information, analyzing it, how we look at it. Basically, before any organization starts this process, you want to know, well, where are I? What's my starting point? What's my return on investment going to be for putting time, effort, and resources into launching these sort of cleanup campaigns? Risk is the obvious one, but we want to see numbers. Management always wants to see numbers. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to some of our new out-of-the-box reports that are going to be shipping with our AD solution. And we'll take a brief look at the collection and the overview. So under our maintenance and cleanup section for Active Directory, we've always had the idea of looking at the objects that reside within AD. We've expanded, and we're going to be continuing investment into these reports and these areas to continue to develop reports that really help utilize organizations to get in, look at their groups, and understand it. So the first report I went into is the enterprise overview, right? So where am I now? This is basically going to gauge as I start cleaning up my environment, changing things, putting things in motion. This is going to be gauged to know, well, where was I and how far have I come over time? This report really covers several different key aspects. So you'll see a bunch of average and statistics. So first one we'll look at is over here on the right-hand side. How many security groups am I dealing with? And organizations typically know they have a lot, but the number isn't always up front and right there to look at. So we'll take a look at the different security groups that are made in use in organizations. Here you can see the breakdown of our universal, domain, local, and global groups, as well as distribution lists, like Adam mentioned, that we're going to be taking a deeper dive and looking at the whole distribution list cleanup campaigns in a later stealth session, but also looking at those because essentially they're groups within Active Directory. So taking a look at the breakdown of the different distribution lists, even the mail-enabled security groups, these are all things, all numbers, critical numbers that you're going to be managing by. These are the statistics and metrics that are going to be measured upon how things are changing over time. Below that, you'll see a couple of average analysis. So this is the pain point. It really illustrates, how is the problem escalating? When you look back over the different versions of Windows and the Microsoft environment, how it's changed from NT4 over the past 20 years up into, people deploying Active Directory 2008 in their environments, how fast are groups being added and how fast are groups being cleaned up. And you can see even in our environment, our smaller production environment here, we're creating 4 groups per day, but we're only cleaning up 2 per day. So it's a losing battle just from the amount of new groups that are going in. So without changing how those things are occurring over time, the number of groups are going to run away. It's just a matter of time. It's guaranteed to happen. So some of the key things we'll look at and we'll do a deep dive on is the creation of modified time. So key indicators of what's going stale over time. not only just the modified dates, but there's also the concept of looking at the membership changes. And these are dates of where users are actually being either directly added into groups or being added as a part of their effective membership of all the groups that are there. Now, if we go back up and look at the left-hand side, we'll take a look at the average direct membership. And these are numbers that are going to be signifying how your environment stands today. Average nesting group levels, how many average direct memberships are in each group, looking at the effective membership of all your groups and how they're changing. Empty groups, obviously very low-hanging fruit. An easy way to go in and start cleaning up your environment is to get rid of groups that have nobody in them, because they're not securing anything out there and they're only taking up space, and they're only compounding the problem of hiding the groups that are the real issue in and amongst all these other groups that are potentially empty in your environment. And then looking at the average daily membership changes. So this is again, people being added or removed out of groups is a daily and hourly process by the identity and access management groups that are constantly being asked to add new people into groups, and occasionally being asked to take them out of groups. But rarely does that really happen. Are we really doing an introspective look at cleaning up some of those things? So we'll switch back to the slide for just a second. So really that was just about establishing the overview of where you are today in an organization. Now we're going to take a look at analyzing the data. So really, how do we make sense of this the view that we provided on things, all of the users and groups that are in the environment, and we're going to go ahead and take a deep dive through several different concepts of comparative analysis on those groups. So we'll go ahead and switch back to the reports and we'll continue on with things.
And just a real quick interjection here for you guys. Obviously, in this particular view here, going through the enterprise view, we've rolled all of the deeper level details up to a higher level so that you can get that bird's eye view of the environment. Of course, those of you who are familiar with the product, you know that the data that we use to roll that information up is underneath the scenes there for you to access within the backend database, and also provided in subsequent reports. So based upon the amount of time we have with you today, we can't get into the nitty-gritty of everything, but just to ease your mind, if you were thinking about it, all of that data is sitting there for you to leverage.
That's great. Thanks, Adam. So we'll take a key look at some of the key indicators about groups that are going stale over time. First, we'll look at the creation time. So when are security groups and distribution lists being created in your environment? And this is really a profile of showing you the number of groups that are getting created and going into that historical group of how many years ago these things have been created. Last modification, is several different components. Modification of a group can change just by changing the title, the department code, or the manager. So any attribute around a group change is going to trigger that something has been changed. It's a good key indicator of a group still being in use, knowing that it's been touched in some way, shape, or form. Now, we also have deeper insight into the membership changes that I mentioned earlier, about really looking at and scrutinizing when did the membership, and that's solely a value of when the direct or the effective membership changes have occurred. That's going to be a key part to take note of is effective membership changes, because of all the nesting that goes on, there would be practically no groups that should never be changing in your environment, as new groups and heavily nested environments are going to be constantly changing those things. As those groups grow static and that membership hasn't changed in a really long time, is going to indicate maybe groups that are potentially no longer in use in the environment.